Welcome, friends, to episode 266 of Color Magic, your Magic Gaming podcast where we talk about all types of stuff that affect gamers at and away from their gaming tables and computers. I am your host, PowrDragn, and for 266 episodes, still got my main man from across the country, Brian Sonic. How's it going, dude?
That's right. Execute Order 266. I'm sorry. I had to.
It's kind of like that, though, today.
Right?
It sort of feels like it. So yeah, this episode we're gonna have a lot to talk about. We had Hasbro stuff, we got some AI stuff, we've got video game studios closing. It's a crazy week, man. So strap yourselves in, grab your favorite beverage. We're gonna have some work to do today. But before we get into it, got to remind everybody, be sure to support us over at patreon.com/colorofmagic. You can get a shout out just like Ernesto Medina. Thank you so much for being a patron, friend. But okay, there's a story we can't avoid. It's obviously been all over nerd news. Elon Musk decided he was now. First off, it sounded like he was just having some issues with some D&D stuff, which is how this all started. Like he got mad that people were soiling the name of Gary Gygax, which is wild that that's even a thing that would be bothersome. Which, by the way, I got some good and bad things on Gary Gygax with my interactions before he passed. So I get it why some people might have some negative opinions, but that's neither here nor there. But then he followed up a couple days later with just a random tweet that said, "How much is Hasbro?" And that got people all up in arms.
When you got Elon money, both of us, when we complain about what's going on at Hasbro, we're just running our mouth. Elon literally can't ask how much is Hasbro and be like, "Will you take a check?" So when he says it, it just has way more weight than when an ordinary person says it.
Yeah. Now, anything we say for the most part on what could or couldn't happen is going to be a bit of speculation, but we can have some fun with that here in a second.
Because I remember we thought he was just joking about buying Twitter too at first, and he may have been just joking at first, and it's like, "Hey, I can afford it. Why not?"
I think the reason he bought, especially why he paid so much, is I think his ego got kicked in the feels a little bit, and then he's like, "Well, now I got to double down and buy it." Right? Like you can't have because you got that much money and that much power, you can't have somebody challenging your power. So you know, here's the thing for me though. There was a lot of like, well, when Elon posted this thing, their stock went up and this and that. If I went and looked, if you look at the stock chart on, I believe it was November 20th, Hasbro had already started going upward. Those tweets from us didn't really come out until the 22nd and I believe the 24th. So maybe it boosted a little bit, maybe it's part of the continued growth, but it wasn't necessarily because of the Elon tweet.
Well,
Right?
stocks are wild. They go up and down
Exactly.
for random reasons.
And that's what I was trying to tell. They're like, oh, well, see, people. It's like, probably a little bit. Anytime somebody with money sounds like they want to get involved with the company or there's going to be a merger, stocks always move. Like we see that all the time where, oh, we heard there might be a meeting between this group and this group. And then you see the stocks go up, then nothing happens. And like 3 weeks later, it goes back to normal or whatever. Like,
Because anytime something is trending, as I know somebody that works from a website to try to see what's trending, hey, this is trending, go write about it. And that includes the people that write for, the Motley Fool and Forbes and all the people that do that. Hey, what stocks are trending and why? And that moves the number in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing too when we start talking about how stocks affect, game companies and, websites and things we're part of. The tough part about it is, and this is why if you hear people say that stocks are kind of funny money at times, it's just because things that don't even affect the business realistically can still move the needle, right? Like the CEO gets found to have slept around on his wife, stock tumbles, and it's like that ain't got nothing to do with nothing, like
yeah, that didn't make him better or worse at business unless he was cheating with the co-CEO or something.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, but that's the reality, right? That's the world we live in. So, as far as facts that we have, I went back and like I said, I tried to see how much of an impact it had. It's like, oh, well, they were already moving up before that, a whole 2 days before that. So it's like, it probably contributed some. I'm not going to say none because it probably did, but I don't think it was just because of that news. So I just want to put that out there to clear some facts up. Now, the other part of this is where we get to have fun. How would we feel about him buying Hasbro? Like I I don't know, man. I don't because here's my problem. living where I lived in Texas, I got to experience and hear stories from SpaceX because it was only a few miles from my shop. And I don't have faith in his leadership, knowing what I know, but he's a person who has lots of money and he can hire people that know more than he does in some things, and he gets to take credit for some things, right? Like, and let's be honest, like he bought things that were already started that he helped just get bigger, right? Like in the case of like Tesla, he didn't create the cars and whatever. He bought the models and designs from people who had created and started Tesla prior to him, right? Same thing with other companies, with pretty much everything he's touched at this point. However, we have a recent example of Twitter, a thing that was going well. And yeah, some people had problems with it, some people didn't. Obviously, it's social media, whatever. But Twitter ain't been going well since he took over. Like, not a thing. Like, advertisers leaving, change the name to X for some. I mean, hell, would you like to play M? Like, I don't know. Right? You know what I mean? Like, that might be a thing in the future if he took over. It's just, everything about it. Everything about it. And they're losing people on Twitter right now, mass numbers, while literally Blue Sky is getting 1 million people a day. Like, that is unfathomable. That's not even a real number to say out loud. You know what I mean? That's how fast you're driving people away. So for me personally, I don't think that's a benefit for us being Magic and D&D players. Maybe for Hasbro as a whole, potentially. And I'll say it with a question mark, depending on what resources he was willing to dedicate to Hasbro or people who was willing to give him access to. Especially if you're talking about like technology stuff or entertainment, big box office division, whatever. Like if you have resources and stuff for that, there's maybe some stuff you can do that maybe Hasbro won't do or can't do right now. So maybe, but as far as like Magic and D&D, they're crushing it right now. They're making tons of money. They're doing whatever. Like you don't want to mess with anything right now. So for from a I don't know, selfish perspective, nah, keep them out of my stuff. Like I don't know how you feel about it, dude. Like what's your perspective?
I mean, he's obviously a very polarizing figure. That said, the group of people that he is probably the most popular with, or I would say
Yeah.
white males from say 18 to 45, and that's still the majority of Magic's player base. So it would probably be a I mean, for what we're seeing, for everything trending, a lot of people, especially in Magic's core fan group, seem to be okay with it. I'm thinking like it kind of reminds me of playing basically. I first want to think of a Civilization, but kind of any 4X game. It almost feels like he's expanding too fast. In Twitter, but as you said, Hasbro may well be a joke, but I think Twitter started out as a joke, and his ego got pushed, and he ended up buying it for real, and now not, as you said, not going so great. So I can't say that he won't decide, okay, it's really the thing I'm doing, but then he also is supposedly trimming $2 trillion from the federal government at some point over the next 4 years. It just unless he can and starting a game studio. So unless he can figure out how to clone himself, I don't know if all of these things are going to be possible.
Yeah, I think to your point, it's also everything else. Once you're at that level, you're talking the Elon Musk, the Bill Gates, whatever. The scale has to be worth it. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
don't get involved in smaller projects. And the total market cap, I believe, on Hasbro right now is like 9.1 or 9.2 billion. That's a lot to us. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like when you're at that scale and you're worth 3 to 500 billion, you know what I mean? Like how much are you gonna have to spend to buy that versus what your profits are gonna be off of it? Whereas right now, if he can, well, when you're not making Cybertrucks, right? When when the rest of Tesla we'll talk about is like starting to move and do well worldwide, like the amount of money he could make is tens of billions, right? When you're involved with the US military and whatever, obviously, like you're saying, $1 trillion for these satellite gigs and all this other stuff, right? Like that's real money. Like I don't even know if that's like a fun side hobby to be in charge of Hasbro when you have that much money and power. You know what I mean? Like, it's a neat idea,
Yeah.
but like, dude, does he even want to bother himself with that? Or even his financial people even want to bother with that? Like, all right, we're going to spend 9 billion or thereabouts to buy it, but then what are we making every year? A couple 100 million? Is that worth it? You know what I mean? Like,
Which
I
I
think,
mean, maybe if he loves D&D that much, maybe it is. Maybe it's just his, almost like a multi-billion-dollar hobby for him. Almost.
bruh, like for real, I
He
had
can
that thought
afford it.
too. Like, could you imagine sitting in a D&D game with Elon Musk?
And I'm sure it'd be interesting.
Like, that's gotta be wild. Like,
I
because
can't say I wouldn't sit in on that
oh
game.
yeah, I'd do it just I have the curiosity factor. You know what I
JD
mean?
Vance, we can get JD Vance in there probably and forget about his magic game.
Yeah,
You
that's
bring him
true.
over.
I mean, again, not a fan, but I'd be curious, because like if he's DMing you, there's got to be some weird stuff.
Great.
You know what I mean?
You turn the corner, 3 Cybertrucks attack with their revenant's teeth.
But I also feel like he'd be that player that a roll doesn't go right, so then he's trying to like nitpick the rules, and you didn't do something the correct way. He'd be that guy, and I'd be like, I don't, dude, I ain't got time for this.
I cast way too much money.
Yeah, exactly. But what if we give the guy 2,000 gold though?
Let's
That's what it
bribe.
feels like.
We're gonna bribe the goblins to leave us alone. That's a good
Yeah,
plan.
exactly. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a weird thing. I get why though it captured social media for the last week basically. Is that it's an interesting thing to think about, right? Because we always talk about how these people with money have these monopolies, right? They keep buying the next business or the next competitor, but they never really come lower on the scale, right? Again, they want the other big business. Like Facebook isn't trying to buy whatever little startup, whatever. They bought like WhatsApp, right? Because that was the thing everybody in Asia and whatever were using or whatever. And like, we want to be the king of that market, right? So they go buy that. Kind of the same thing here. We never see people go, "Oh, let's buy this little game studio or let's buy this little game company," because like the money and the scale just isn't there. So this is the one time where it's like, "Oh, well, let's talk about it," right? Like, let's at least speculate and have some fun with this. But do I think he realistically wants to buy it? Like I said, the scale, like even with Twitter, there's the control of information. You know what I mean? Even to build his own brand and whatever, to use it as his own advertising vehicle for his projects or whatever, which is fine. You own the platform, do whatever you're going to do. But at least there's a reason there. Like, it's
And
hard.
I have to give him credit for having the foresight on Twitter, because what it looks like is about to happen is that all the liberal people will be on Blue Sky
Yeah.
and all the right wing people will be on Twitter, because Rumble just is for Rumble's for Dr. Disrespect and Russell Brand.
Yeah.
If you can't even get on Kick, Rumble wants you. So for the conservative people that are at least hopefully not creepers and not canceled, they look like they're going to be congregating on Twitter.
Yeah. For the
So
most part. So I mean, and like I said, that makes sense, right? From an information, money, whatever. It's like I told people, like, as much as it sounds interesting, I just don't know what somebody's real motivation with that much money would be, other than just to say I have it,
and sometimes that's the thing.
you know? And maybe you're right, it could be. But even if then, I don't think he'd really do much with it other than to say I have it and just let it generate its money for the most part. Because what else is there to do? Now, like I said, unless you're going to dedicate resources, they can do some crazy stuff on the technological side. Otherwise, and even then, are you and your financial people, whatever, going to say, all right, we're going to invest, I don't know, $2 billion in these tech projects for Hasbro? Do your projections even say you're going to get that 2 billion back in the next 8 years? Right. And what could you do with that other 2 billion
I
on other things?
maybe with his new government cut, he'd be like, "Hey, you want to play D&D with Putin? I can make it happen."
I mean, that's dude, maybe. I don't know, dude.
Play
It's
like with D&D, we got Putin, Angela Merkel,
get the my pillow dude, you know.
right?
No, I don't know. Seriously though, like I just don't know where what the real motivation would be, other than, like we said, maybe it's a Twitter thing and it's bragging rights and got to call my bluff or whatever, right? But yeah, I don't know. I don't, like I said, people have asked me. I said I'll save it for the show, but I don't think it's gonna be a deal. Like if Vegas were given, if I was the odds maker in Vegas, I wouldn't be giving you good odds on the yes. You know what I mean? Like you'd get a lot of money betting against it. But yeah, I just don't think it's a thing right now.
Yeah, I just don't. Just what we know is on his plate. It's hard to see him having unless, like you said, he buys it and just puts somebody that's really capable in charge of it and is completely hands off. And I don't even know if Elon does completely hands off.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I don't know if it's his personality type to be too hands off.
That's true. All right, let's hop into the soapbox because I got a gripe this week. Now, I don't know if it's the time of year because people are starting to figure out how they're going to spend their money and the holidays and, and all that. But it seems like periodically we have and I hadn't seen this conversation come up for a minute, but it's been on a couple of different places and I saw it on Facebook and on social media. Like people being mad that or making fun of people who are spending a lot of money on the free to play games they like to play. Which is weird because one, if you're having fun and being successful at the game and you're not spending anything, congratulations, right? Like that's not a bad thing. You have found a way to play the system or maximize it in whatever the context is of the game you're playing without spending any resources. Personally, I try to at least put in a minimum of 10 or 20 bucks a month for whatever, battle pass or whatever they have, just so I'm contributing to the system that gives me entertainment for, 15, 20 hours a week. That's a personal thing. But to be mad and make fun of and belittle people for spending money just because you don't is weird, because the reality is those people spending money are the reason you get to play for free. Like if they're not spending any money, you don't have a game. Like period, right? The whales have your back. Like you may not think so, but they're the ones driving the ship to make sure there's money so you get all these things you want. Especially when some of the free to play players are also the ones, if you go through their accounts, complaining about, well, why don't we don't have this thing? Or why doesn't this get upgraded? Or why don't we have this quality of life thing? Like, where do you think those employees and those employee hours come from? Somebody's got to pay for it. Right. And
Then
there's a
also
ton.
complain if there's ads in the game. Look, this thing's got to make
Yep.
money.
Yep. You're right. That's another thing. Like, and I feel it. Like there's some apps I use that are just free downloadable apps for like searching stuff in town or whatever, and they have ads on them. I could be bothered, but they're giving me lots of information for free, so I don't get to complain. You know what I mean? Now, if you give me an ad-free option, I might give you the $4.99 or whatever. Like cool. But if you don't, I get it. If I want to get what I want for free, they got to make money from somewhere.
NBA 2K took a lot of flack because they had a mission where literally Jake from State Farm was an NPC and he gave you questions. Oh my God, they sold out. Real NBA players do commercials with Jake from State Farm.
Mm-hmm.
If you are doing a simulator in which you pretend to be an NBA player, part of that is, you spend 6 hours on set with Jake from State Farm. That's the thing NBA players do. So it's like,
Dude, wait, was that 2K22 or 23? Because I feel like
I
I
think
I
so.
saw it. Yeah, because that's like in the beginning segment when you're doing
Yep.
the story mode. Yeah, I remember that. I thought it was cool though. Like it's a
Because
cool way for the
again,
company to get some extra
yeah,
money. And it's not just like a random ad, like they worked it into the thing.
right?
So it's part of the story and the characters. So I'm like, great. That's
We
good
all
product
know it.
placement.
Every time you watch a 2 hour NBA game, you'll see no less than 5 or 6 commercials featuring Jake from State Farm. So it's
Mm-hmm.
completely realistic. More so than the years where they make up, hey, you got to go sell Joe's local insurance, and it doesn't
Yeah,
feel authentic
exactly.
because, you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to be mad about. Like, and even if you have people break it down, they'll just say, well, if it's free, it should be free. Like, I'm not giving them any money. If you say it's free to play, it's free
Then,
to play.
okay, then how does it get to exist if nobody gives them any money?
Exactly. I'm just like, but how are we so small minded that we can't process that that's a thing?
We'll
Also
talk
weird.
about a free to play game closing here later in the show. But just as another one that was I loved, Rumbleverse. I would have happily paid you $20 a month to keep Rumbleverse online. I'll bet you a lot of the players would have done the same because it is one of the most fun games I have ever played. Every day I miss it.
Was that was the wrestler one, right? With
Yeah,
the
it was a
big,
battle
oh
royal. Only it
yeah.
was wrestling instead of shooting. There was nothing like it.
Yeah, I remember I was thinking about going and playing it, and then like the day I went to go download it is they posted the notice of like, we're only gonna be open for the next like 30 days or whatever. And I was like, oh man. Like, and I'm with you. If it was like a $20 download and maybe a couple of dollars a month, I probably would have played it. At least as
Yeah.
long as I was active playing it, I'd have
It'd
paid
be
for it.
sweet luchador masks and cool things,
Dude, the fact that I could chair shot and trash can people or whatever, like that was
right?
awesome.
You
Like,
could attack people and they would explode full of power ups as if they were a pinata, and then there would be another fight over, hey, this loot human just exploded. Let's all
yep.
go.
Yeah, man, it's a tough thing. I also watch these same people, and I think I've talked about this before, where they will be upset that anybody's spending money on a free to play thing, but then brag about getting the new $60, $70 AAA title and being done with it in a week. And
Right.
it's like, so the thing you play literally every day for 2 or 3 hours a day, you're like, nah, y'all can't have any money. But the thing that you only played for a week, you went and gave them $60 to $70,
Right.
and then
That's
you're
if you
never going
just
to
bought
touch
the
it again.
regular edition. A lot of people buy the $150 edition with skins and a statue of Spider-Man or what have you.
Yeah. And I tell people, like, I'm also not faulting the person who wants to go spend $60, $70 on that. It's your money. If that's how you want to have fun with it, go for it. But to buy that and be totally okay with that, but then be totally mad at somebody else for spending money over here is weird. It's just how you choose to spend your money, right? Like, for a lot of people, it's more about the experience, right? You'll go to a movie with your significant other, y'all will go spend $60 for 2 hours. Cool. That's all right for people. I get it. We're used to the experience of the movies. But if somebody doesn't go out a lot and their favorite game is what they spend time playing 2 or 3 hours a week, cool. If they're spending 20, $30 a month on the game, let them. Like, it makes sense. Like, what's the problem? It's just a weird space, man. I
Yeah.
don't You gotta understand the game's gotta get made. People gotta
Exactly.
be paid, right? Like, you don't get new stuff if people aren't paying into the games. Yes, they're free to play, but somebody has to be, whether, like you're saying, whether it's ads, whether it's people buying downloadable trinkets, DLC, whatever, it's gotta be a thing. There's no way around
I'm
it.
somebody though, absolutely. You give me a cool skin or something for my favorite character, yes, take my money for crying out loud.
Dude, I think I told you before, I haven't played League of Legends for more than 2 hours in the last, hell, probably 10 years. I saw that there was a cool Sivir skin, and I went, "You know what? Imma log in, give them their $4.99. Imma get this,
Right?
so if I ever come back, I have the sweet skin when I play one of my favorite characters." Right? Like, so if you got it, I'll give it to you. I don't care, but it's just one of those things. And of course,
Marvel Rivals about to drop. Yeah, I'm just going ahead and take my money for all the
oh, dude,
various alternate,
exactly. The variant skins they can have in that with like
right?
the 4 or 5 different Spider-Man suits, the like 4 different Iron Man suits. You could get probably samurai Wolverine,
Yep.
yellow and blue Wolverine, like the brown and
Mid-
black Wolverine.
medieval Captain America, no, Yeoman America. Like,
Yep.
yeah, I want all that.
And people are going to do the same thing, right? Well, if it's free to play, I don't know why you're spending all this money on it, because I want the sweet, cool thing that I'm a
Yeah.
fan of.
As my cousin once said, we were talking about this. You don't want to look like everybody else. You want to look like you know what you're doing. you
That's
know?
a good one. Like, I can respect that. If you're going to be important, you got to look important, right?
Right?
Yeah, I don't know. People just gotta get off their high horse, man. Like, let people spend how they want to spend. It's their money. If it keeps your game going, cool. Like, I get it if we're worried about an actual like pay to win scenario, but most of the time it's not actually pay to win. It's people being mad they're getting their butt kicked and they need an excuse. But usually it's not. And we see people doing well in almost every game that play for free on the free to
Right?
play stuff. So that's not really the excuse. Like, can it make it easier sometimes? Yeah, sure. But
The
yeah,
tournament I just qualified for, I hadn't spent any money beyond the price of the game. Now, after I qualified for the tournament, I said, okay, yeah, I want to show up and I want to lose because my cornerback is a 91 instead of a 92. It says, then I put a little money in. But yeah, I qualified for the tournament without spending a single extra dollar. So I can
yeah,
tell you it can be done.
ain't nothing wrong with that. All right, let's talk about what we learned this week because there's a couple of things, both in the video game space, that are kind of sad and weird. So what you got, dude?
Yeah, this didn't come as a shock. XDefiant, the kind of shared universe shooter in the Ubisoft space, if you will. They announced that they are sunsetting. They're going to start that right now. Nobody else will be allowed to download or purchase it. If you purchase the Founders Edition, like we talked about, that's the really good edition where you get all the cool stuff. And you'll get a refund, and then I think the servers are going to stay up until June, I believe. So everybody that's already purchased it still has another several months to play it. But yeah, we kind of knew that was happening. It got off to a great start. I think they hit 5 million faster than any game in that genre over the first couple of days. I think 50 million players total played it. It just as time we talk about how every week, especially this time of the year, a new huge game is dropping, and they just couldn't sustain the momentum. And then of course, rumors started leaking like, "Hey, the game is probably not going to make it." Ubisoft executives are saying if you don't make X Y money this quarter, it's going to go. That doesn't make, not that they leaked it. It's just that's what we do in games journalism is we find these things out, and that doesn't inspire more people to jump on and buy the Founders Edition. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. As we talked about, Ubisoft is already having just a horrible year with Assassin's Creed Shadows getting postponed, Star Wars Outlaws not doing what they hoped it would do. So it just the horrible year over at Ubisoft continues. Heads, I'm sure, are going to roll real soon.
Yeah, I think to your point, that is something I've always considered. Like when news comes out that, well, if we don't meet these metrics, or hey, here's the expectation, like this could be closed in the next 60 days, 90 days, whatever. I feel like that does deter people, right? Like, I don't know if I want to go download this, spend all this time, like you're saying, buy some skins or whatever to just not be able to use it in a month.
Right?
So now people just aren't going to pick it up. So
And
you're
again,
almost
I
doomed at
love
that
the
point.
concept. It was a great. It's for anybody that hadn't heard, because we talked about it a little bit. It kind of Ubisoft has all the various, obviously all the Tom Clancy shooters, all the Far Cry games. It's basically it put all those different shooters in a shared universe, so you can pick, for your character, if you want to be a Far Cry freedom fighter, or if you want to be one of the Tom Clancy Rainbow Six Echelon guys. The thing I hate, they're not going to get. The next season was going to be the Assassin's Creed season, and I guess we'll never get that now. I wanted to see how they were going to have, because I'm assuming the Assassins were going to have guns. They'd have knives and maybe, I guess the ones that they could maybe have like flintlock pistols. I think they
Yeah,
go up to at
exactly.
least the 1800s in Assassin's Creed. So I would have loved to have seen that. And I guess we're unfortunately not going to get that. Would there be
Man,
hay bales for your character to fall into, strategically placed across the map? I had so many questions that will probably. I wish there was some way they could put that out, but I'm sure they probably we're stopping work. We're stopping work right now. Don't dedicate any more resources
yeah.
to this.
That almost feels like something they should have put out anyway, because it's your lead title. There's an audience for it. At least try to get some of that interest into the game before you kill it. But, it might just be too expensive, at the end of the
And
day.
sadly, this might have not been the year. Any other year, Assassin's Creed, like, yeah, this might have been the year where if it's got Assassin's Creed on it, I don't want to see it because it was just that kind of year for the franchise.
That's a good point. If you're already having a down year for it, it's probably hard to justify pushing it through, honestly. Like, your expected results are definitely going to be lower. So, that's unfortunate. And it's sad too. This is what, like the fourth studio this year we've heard about, like closing up. Just
Well, the studio is still fine. The game just isn't
oh,
going
okay.
to
Well,
go
that's good at
anywhere.
least.
At least we think it's they're having the studio is having a bad year. So there are definitely rumors, but as of right now, nothing reported that their whole thing is going on. Although supposedly Tencent is sabotaging things to be able to buy it at a cheaper price. We'll keep keep our eyes on that.
Yeah, don't know where that's gonna go. So following up kind of from earlier with all the tweets that Elon Musk was putting out, on the 27th, he posted a deal basically saying too many game studios are owned by massive corporations and he wants to start an AI game studio run by XAI. He could have tried harder, but this is what we get. But it's interesting because again, it's how much are we going to spend on this project? Like what are the expected returns?
So is he saying the AI would literally be in charge of the studio itself? It would be making decisions, or
I think all my initial things as far as because there weren't a lot of details, but asking some people that are kind of in that space or whatever, the now this is speculated. The thought process is it would be using AI to generate all the game parts. So the
so no
characters, the
artists,
storyboards.
no writers,
Apparently not. You might have some just for directive purposes, but using AI to do the actual bulk of the work. Largely pushed by his Grok, I think is what they call it on TikTok, the AI or Twitter,
yeah,
the AI that's part of it, and using a lot of that they've taught or learned or whatever as part of their other studio. So I, like knowing what we've already dealt with as far as AI and the gamer front, that's already going to be a hurdle. You know what I mean? And how much better are you going to make the game with strictly AI that people are going to be more interested in? Right? Because we've said it before. Like these last 2 years, we have seen banger titles, right?
right?
Huge licenses, huge fan bases, and some of them just can't get traction. And it might just be because already in the gaming front as a whole, we have an embarrassment of riches right now. Like we can't spend enough time to play all the games we want to play, much less all the new ones to even look at. Because that's been my problem. Like we've
Right.
talked about so many games, and I'm like, that's going to be at least 100 hours. I don't even know where I'd find 100 hours to play that. You know what I mean? Like, so I just don't touch it. Hell, I'm still working through Baldur's Gate, and we're on like I don't know, like hour 120 or something.
Yeah.
Like, and I still
And
probably have another.
because they put so many different possible branching storylines in there.
Yeah, and I've still got easily another 40 to 70 hours in that game before we're done with it. So I don't even know where I'd find time for. And and again, I'm playing arena and making content. I
Right?
play some team fight tactics already. Like even if these other titles come out and they look fun, I'm like it sucks that I can't support them because I just don't have time in my schedule to do it. So even if his studio made a nice title, like you're saying, you actually liked XDefiant and it started out strong and it couldn't even maintain its stuff with a big game company behind it.
At the beginning, we were hearing this is going to be the Call of Duty killer. That's also a thing we should stop saying about games.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody killing Call of Duty. If like magic, if Call of Duty dies, the call will come from inside the house.
Yep. Dude,
Nope.
I'm with you. I think across the board, we need to stop with the D&D killer, the magic killer, the Madden killer, the whatever. Like,
Them things ain't
ain't
happening.
happening. It just ain't happening. Like, when you're talking about institutional, and maybe that, you know what? Maybe that's a big part of it too. When people are worried about where and how to spend their money, you're going to spend on the things that have the institutionalized communities,
Yeah.
right? Because there's always going to be players, there's always going to be new content, there's always going to be content creators making stuff for it, always going to be a new strategy, new DLC. So you're going to get your money's worth out of those things. If you jump into a new title, one, you don't even know how long it's going to be around, but two, you really don't know how much you're going to get out of it. You don't know how big the audience is going to be. So I think it's a lot easier when people want to get into a new game, they look at the ones that already have some existing community that they haven't played yet.
I remember back in the, I guess, PlayStation 3 or 4 days when Killzone was going to be the Halo killer. And yeah, Halo's kind of down bad, but it's nothing Sony did. It's because Halo came out. Hey, You know how everybody loves Master Chief and cosplays as Master Chief? Yeah. What if we made the next game and it stars somebody completely different, not Master Chief? What Halo? Why would you
Yeah.
ever do that? And it's been kind of on a downward spiral ever since then.
But hell, even then, it took Halo, what, 15 years to start their downward slide?
Yeah.
Like,
And they did it to themselves. Nobody else did it. They did something real dumb and never recovered. Let's take
yeah,
the most recognizable character in the shooter genre and not make him the focus of the game. What? Why?
yeah, I just don't. I've seen some stuff people have done recently with AI to like, we generated this anime with AI and we're doing whatever. Like, some of that stuff is where, like, I use the word soulless, but when you see that, you start to go, yeah, there's no feeling here.
Have you seen the Coca-Cola commercial?
No.
They got a Coca-Cola commercial, with the polar bears and a lot of other, like, I like to teach the world to sing, Coke, stuff that you'll recognize.
Hmm.
It's looking like all AI, and yeah, same thing, just soulless.
Yeah, there's just something, and it's weird to say because, like, it's like, well, how do I know what port is? I'll know when I see it or whatever it is that dude said, right? That's sort of how it feels when, like, how will I know when something's soulless? Like, you see it and there's no way to describe it. Like, you're watching it and you're like, this just doesn't feel like anything. Like, it's like I'm watching it, but there's no emotion, there's no purpose, there's no it's just kind of there.
There's
And
like, if anybody, especially if you're a 90s kid, if you hadn't seen the Chippendale Rescue Rangers movie that they just did, you got to watch it. It's excellent. There's a part of the town where they go into the part of the town because the whole thing is parodying various animation genres and styles. They go to a part of town where everything is animated like the Polar Express as an
oh,
example of his soulless computer generated. You remember the animation style from the 90s where everything looked real, but
yeah.
nothing looked right? And they go
Yeah.
talk to the characters, and the characters can't make eye contact because they're doing the Polar Express and they're looking like 70 or 80 degrees to the left or to the right. Polar Express made Tom Hanks look scary. That shouldn't be possible.
That's a good example, right? When you just go too far with the technology. Now, don't be wrong. I do believe somewhere down the line, AI will get better and better and better, and like we'll slowly figure it out or whatever. But I don't know. Like like
It
do
started to happen at Christmas a lot. You remember a couple years ago, the
yeah.
horrible LeBron James water spray cranberry? That thing was just.
Yeah, that was weird. That was weird.
Somebody took it and they made a horror game out of it because of just how creepy. If I wake up and I see CG LeBron hovering over me, yeah, I'm swinging. If I can find a weapon, I'm swinging the weapon.
I mean, I'll say this though, right? Like, and Musk literally said the quote, like, he wants to make games great again or whatever,
Oh
which,
boy.
make of that what you will. But
Speaking of things that get parodied,
my thing is, does the video game industry really need saving? Like, what problem is he solving? Right? Like we're saying, we have the opposite problem right now. It's not that there's a bunch of bad games, it's that there's too many good games. There's just too
right?
many games. Right? Like that's the problem. And it doesn't matter if you want to play on mobile, if you want to play on
Yeah.
PC, if you want to play on Xbox, like every device has like 20 to 30 great new games every year.
You could literally just play Marvel Snap and lose hours of your time. And many
Yes.
other phone games, same thing. Is absolutely true.
And that's kind of my point. Is like, what would we even be solving by him starting the studio and making a thing? Like, what? There's nothing that needs to be saving. Like, look at the video game awards. Like, there was tons of great games on there. And most people haven't played any of them because they
Right?
just don't have time. So, like, that's not the issue. Hell, it's so good that Balatro, which is just a
Poker
card based,
roguelike.
yeah, that was able to, like, that's how far we're, even the most basic games have high replayability and skill and whatever. So making games isn't the problem.
Because people are asking me how I feel. Like, I mean, the thing has a Metacritic of 90. So pretty much, I haven't played it yet, but so far, everybody that I've heard of that played it loved it to the point where it's nominated for Game of the Year, which again, for that doesn't happen for roguelikes often.
Oh,
Certainly, like
almost never.
anything card based, that almost never happens.
And
And
what's
now I'm
crazy
wondering,
is once the award list came out, their downloads spiked because
yeah,
people were like, "What is this?" And it's only like $10. Yeah, I'll go check it out.
it's like the Oscars. A lot of people, they hear about a great game for the first time either at the Game Awards or when the nominations drop.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think it's really a necessary thing. Nothing may come of it. It's a weird tweet, but let's get into some different topics here because we have a few things to cover. Quick little reminder, if you're into Pioneer, well, we're about to have it on Arena officially. Pioneer Masters, all the cards have been previewed. Thursday, probably when you're listening to this, there will be a streamer event so you can watch people play with it. And then next week, it goes live. So you'll be able to just play with Pioneer as an actual format on MTG Arena. So if you've been waiting on that, now's your time. Other interesting news, though, we talked about this early in the year, but apparently MrBeast has announced that the Beast game series is complete and will be launching on Amazon Prime on December 19th. So 1,000 competitors and $5 million, making it the largest live game show ever.
Challenges include eating MrBeast moldy cheese lunch meals and surviving.
Shoot, maybe. I don't know. Like, it's possible.
Speaking of people who may be expanding their empire a little bit too fast.
Yeah. That's a weird one because, like, if you could convince a studio to give you a giant pile of money to make a game show, I might still try to.
Oh, yeah, everybody. I love game shows. Mine, I'm sure, would be a trivia based show, but I would absolutely
Yeah, I
do
would
something
do
like
it.
that.
I don't blame them on that one. That's one the Lunchables thing. I don't think that was necessary. But the game show, I totally would have pulled that trigger and went for it. I don't know what to even expect, honestly. Obviously, it's built kind of in the space of Squid Game, sort of, but I'm probably gonna check it out. I at least kind of want to know. There's a curiosity thing that's gonna get me.
And it's
You know?
right before Christmas, so you'll be looking for something to binge when that turkey and ham or whichever, whatever your mac and cheese, whatever your wig out food of choice is, just binge that, watch MrBeast, and
Yeah. I'd be
they're like,
into
I
it.
can do that. I can totally do
Everybody can do everything till they're put in the position to do it. Oh, here's another interesting thing. How we've talked about secret layers because we've been griping about how they never have enough, even when they have big licenses or whatever. It appears, because obviously we can't see the numbers, but it appears that the latest Hatsune Miku secret layer, Electric Entourage, actually had more printed for it. It's been up for a couple days. It is reading low stock, so they're almost out now. But that's a thing that maybe finally they were like, hey, these last couple sold out in like 2 hours or whatever it was, 3 hours. We should probably be making more money on these.
Do the
So
stockholders, somebody's got to see the numbers, right? The stockholders
they've
should surely see the
gotta.
numbers if they asked, right?
They've gotta. Now,
The
now, yeah.
IRS has to get the numbers, so somebody
Oh
somewhere's got to
yeah.
know.
I'm sure if they dove in, somebody could ask, right? But the reality is, everybody's saying, "Oh, well, it's just so they can have FOMO," and they sell out. You can't, like, at some point, if you're constantly selling out in 2 hours, you sit down and go, "How much more money could we make?" Like, because you're literally leaving millions on the table. So hopefully, this is a sign of things to come for the actual like licensed secret layer stuff. So hopefully, when we get more Marvel stuff, and there's going to be some stuff for, um, I was about to say Kingdom Hearts, but wrong one, for Final Fantasy, right? Like, it'll
I'm
be
sure there will be a Kingdom Hearts one at some point.
probably. So that'd be cool though, to at least, if this is a sign of that, these won't sell out as fast. More people can get their hands on them. Like, it'd be nice. So hopefully this is a trend and not just like the exception to the rule. Now, there was a fun thing that came across the radar a couple of days ago. Magic Academy. This is something I'd heard about and Wizards has kind of been working on for a long time, but it looks like it's finally launching for local game stores to help onboard players into the Magic community. And it's funny because people ask me, like, formerly being an LGS owner and all this, like, how do I feel about it? The reality is, for me, in my situation, what I had, like, I wouldn't have needed this program. It would have been nice to still have the tools because you still get like the welcome decks you can give away and stuff, and that's always nice. But for the stores that don't have the either the proper language or tools to teach people, or they don't have the right direction, or maybe they don't have quite a knowledgeable enough staff. This is cool because it gives you the resources, it gives you a website, it gives you products you can hand to people, it gives you promos to entice people in, right? It gives you every tool you need to get somebody into your store, get them into the system, teach them magic, and hopefully get them to come back. So I'm hoping this Magic Academy does well for the stores that need it because, like I told everybody, I don't think every store needs it, but for the ones that need it, they
They
really need it.
really need it. Yeah.
And I think that's why this is going to be really good. So crossing my fingers that this does well for people because, man, if it does, this could be the next big wave of players for a lot of stores.
I'd like to see like really every card game adopt some form of this.
That's a good point. A lot of them probably do need like it's tough though because I can probably I can tell you without telling specific numbers, it does take millions of dollars to do it, and that's hard for some studios because just printing all the decks to give away is a huge budget marker. I mean, you're talking about a couple $100,000 just in the little 30 card sample decks that they give to people. And it's a ton because you're talking having to print so many for every store and having enough that they could restock if they do well. And then, let's say you set up at
Like
like,
Yu-Gi-Oh could do it,
yeah,
Pokemon could afford to do it.
for sure, for sure. So yeah, I think these programs will be a thing going forward if they go well. So I'm crossing my fingers and hoping because what I don't think people realize is outside of these types of efforts, the last time that I would say there was significant, like the most significant growth in Magic, believe it or not, was when Duels of the Planeswalkers was around.
That's actually what got me into Magic.
Yeah, people downloaded on their consoles, they played, and then they had that like redemption thing that you could go to your local store and you got like a promo card or whatever. And then I think the last year that there was like a mixed booster pack or something you got. And that did a lot. But they haven't really had a thing since then, and this could be the next thing. So that's actually really cool that this is a new effort. So I hope it works. The website looks cool. Everything's really colorful and bright. Fits with all the foundations marketing with the bright pinks and yellows and stuff. So hope it works out, man. I really do. But that brings us to the dinner table, and this should be a fun conversation because I think we don't know each other's answers for this. So this will be a good one. But I will ask you, Brian, what is your favorite or a big or important memory for you from your first local game store?
Whew, so many. If I were to pick one, it would probably be just that I actually learned about fantasy football at that game store because I saw people being into it, and I had heard about it, but I'd never played it. To hey, we're doing fantasy football. Like, okay, how does that work exactly? And 30 years later, at this point, I have written fantasy football articles. I've won a couple of fantasy football championships, and I mean, I feel like I'm around enough football people where I'd have gotten into it eventually, but it happened at my local game store. And
You got fast tracked.
exactly, hey, how did I pick most of my games? All my friends are playing them, and all my friends are playing fantasy football.
That's funny. I think I have two. The first is I remember there was this kid, and at the time I'm probably 16 ish. And there was this kid who probably couldn't have been older than 12 or 13. And he had opened a pack of magic cards and he would quickly sift through it, like almost panicked, and like try to trade off cards as soon as he got them. And I was just like, what's up with this kid? Like, and what I realized is he was always trading away the black and the red cards because he couldn't have them in his house.
Oh wow! Oh
Like,
yeah, because demons.
yeah, they didn't because it always had like the skeletons or the fire or whatever. Like, just couldn't have it. So he would just try to trade for nearly anything with somebody else that was there and then like jet back out of the door. And I always thought, man, that's crazy. Like somebody's collection for the first like 2-3 years of him collecting has like no red or black cards, which is
Great.
wild. But I do remember a specific time where a friend came up to me and he's like, hey man, this guy wants to trade me a Mox Saph or a Mox Emerald for my Shivan Dragon. And I was like, what does a Mox Emerald do? And he's like, oh, it makes green mana. And And he's like, but we already have a lot of forests. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And at the time, the Shivan Dragon, I think, was like $25 and the Moxes were like 15 bucks or something. And he was like, I think I'm just gonna tell him I'm gonna hold on to the dragon. I'm like, yeah, that's probably a good deal. I just hold on to
Yeah.
it. And then what was crazy is like I don't even think it was maybe like 6 months later. We're looking in was it Duelist or one of those magazines that had like the price guide in it at the time?
Back when you had to look at the magazine to find
Yeah.
matching prices,
I'm like,
youngins.
dude, you remember that Mox Emerald that guy wanted to trade you? He's like, yeah, that thing's like $35 now. It's like more than a Shivan Dragon. He's like, man, that's wild. Yeah. And then as we started playing more and playing more tournament, we figured out that like, man, them Moxes are pretty good. We should probably get some more of them. But yeah, it's the early days, man. A lot of stuff just it's easy to take a lot of things for granted, just through gaming, but also through society of just like how we understand games and what they are, or whatever. Because you're talking 30 years ago. That's crazy. That's such a long amount of time. Like that's longer than some of the people listening to this have been alive. You know what I mean? Like, which is a wild thing to think about. But yeah, crazy times, man. But all right, why don't you everybody they can find you on the social media machines,
All
Brian?
right. I am Brian Sonic on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. You can read my writings over at App Trigger. Please stop by. We'll be, well, obviously, we just finished Black Friday. We'll be telling you where to get a lot of your Christmas games for hopefully a lot cheaper.
That's probably worth reading, so people should go do that. You can find me everywhere at PowrDragn, PowrDragn, pretty much everywhere. And of course, if you want constant content, I got a bunch of stuff coming out, so hit me up on the YouTube. So I was about to say the Facebooks. But as always, wherever you are watching or listening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please remember to take care of yourselves and your family. Remember to be awesome, but most importantly, especially during the holidays, be awesome to each other.